speaker today is Professor Uri Gneezy, or Uri Gneezy as I'm learning to say. He is the Epstein Atkinson Endowed Chair in Behavioural Economics at the University of California in San Diego. Uri's research has focused a lot on behaviour incentives to change behaviour. And I guess as you discover this field and you learn more about it, you actually work out that behavioural or providing incentives for behaviour can sometimes work and sometimes not work. And Uri will talk about that in a moment. Our format is slightly changed today though. Uri's going to speak for about 30 minutes, and in response to some of the feedback we had from previous presentations, we want to open up for questions. So we're going to have a facilitated panel session. Afterwards, I'll introduce the speakers, or the members of that panel at the end of Uri's talk. And we should have at least half an hour. I'll ask some questions, but we'll also allow more time for our audience to ask questions of our entire panel, including Uri. And from me, I'd like to welcome Uri to the stage.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Jim, and BehaviourWorks, and whoever is in charge of bringing me here. I had a good time so far. If you have questions, in the middle, please try. We'll see if there'll be too many of them. I'll ask you to stop, but it's going to be more interesting if you'll ask questions. I want to start with a story. When I was 21, in 1988, I finished my military service in Israel, and I went abroad. I went to Europe to see places, got to Florence, and saw David, that sits in the academia in Florence. It's an amazing center. I remember, spending 2 hours watching it. It's really spectacular, and I remember it, for many, many years. And I haven't been back until now. That's 25 years later. In this May, I was there for a conference, so I went again, stood in line, wanted to see what happened to David. At the time, I looked a bit like him, and that's what happened to David now, right? After 25 years, he gained some weight, and he's not in the best shape. And that's what I want to talk about. Right? Basically, how can we use incentives? How can we take incentives and change this course of action that we see that so many of us have? How many of you want to exercise more? Right, lose weight, I don't know, play less computer games, whatever. Every one of us has some bad habits, otherwise you're really boring if you don't have it. So the question is, how can we use incentives to change this kind of behavior? And it's sometimes really, really difficult because the incentives are already there. Think about the first guy over here, right? Obese 55-year-old man. Goes to the doctor, pre-diabetic, goes to the doctor tells him, look, if you'll walk half an hour a day, your situation is going to be so much better. If not, in a year you won't be able to get off the chair. You're going to be in horrible shape. And yet that person doesn't walk half an hour a day. We're not talking about running a marathon. We're talking about walking half an hour a day. And they don't do it. How can we take incentives into such an environment where the incentives are so strong already and change the behavior, right? So it's a real challenge. And sometimes we understand why it's a challenge. So my daughter is 19-year-old now, and she smokes. And she understands, she saw people that got sick out of smoking. She understands everything. But health benefits when she's 60, that 60 is like never going to happen. So she doesn't care about it. And so we understand why incentives don't work over there, and it doesn't mean that it's not a challenge. And as I said, I also have some incentives, some habits that I would like to change, and it's not always trivial. I'm going to talk about a few things today. I want to start with, kind of a background. Why are we in such a situation? It's going to be a very short one. So I Googled and found this island, New Ireland, Papua New Guinea, long and narrow. Seems like a great place. That's why I use it. It's the picture looks great. I got these quotes from there. The people are warm and friendly, and I would like to invite you to the route. It seems I want to be there, right? They work the land, they fish, don't make too much money, but they're kind of happy. Compare them to people in a different island. That's the island of Manhattan, right? So again, you can look at the picture and say, the people are warm and friendly, or maybe you shouldn't go if they invite you to their homes, right? It's kind of a very different environment. People, many people in New York spend more money on ice cream than more than $289 on ice cream. So they sit and work with the computer all day. We sit and work with the computer, most of us, right? We don't really exercise. The people in New Ireland, they fish, they hunt, they work in agriculture. So think of change. On the one hand, we exercise less. On the other hand, the temptation is much higher. Right? And the question is, how can we use behavioral economics to change this? Just two slides about behavioral economics. Basically, traditional economics looks at this guy, Mr. Spock. He doesn't make mistakes, he doesn't have emotions, he doesn't care about other people. He's a very simple guy. Right? So you show him something, you show him a brochure, he reads it from top to bottom, and he understands everything, all the small prints, right? He has no limit in understanding or attention or emotions or anything. Very boring guy, very standard. That was economics for many, many years, from World War II until very recently. Behavioral economics try to look at people that are more like us, right? Like Mr. Simpson. I'm like him, right? So I make stupid decisions. I have limited attention. I care about others. They have emotions. I'm going to talk about regret, for example. I suffer from it, right? So we are much more interesting than Mr. Spock, which is good because it makes the incentives much more interesting, right? The people that we deal with are much more interesting than Mr. Spock, but we need to understand this. And that's what behavioral economics tries to do. We talked about the two islands. I want to start with incentives to exercise. So the simple question is, can we use incentives, money, to change people's exercising behavior? Now, it's very easy to change the behavior while you're paying people. In this case, the people are going to be students. We call them people. They are not really people, but still we're going to use them because it's a convenient set of people. Right? And we're going to pay them some money to go to the gym. And the question is, what happens after we stop paying them? So in particular, we had two groups. One of them, we paid to come to the lab once, go to the gym, see where the gym is, and that's it. The other one was the same, but we paid them to go to the gym 8 times during the month. We paid them $100 to do that, and again, if you pay student $100, you can get them do almost whatever you want, right? So it's a simple group. And the interesting question is, what's going to happen once we stop paying them? Until now, we paid them to go to the gym, they went to the gym, right? I can spoil the surprise to you. We paid them to go to the gym, they went to the gym. Very simple. But what's going to happen once we stop paying them? You can think about two competing hypotheses. The first one we call crowding out. So sometimes when you pay people to do something, they actually do less of this activity. So my favorite example, because it's mine, is from a daycare study that we did. So when the daughter, who is now 19, was still in daycare with her sister, we were supposed to pick them up by 4 p.m. from the daycare. I'm sure you're familiar with this, and we signed a contract saying that we'll pick them up by 4 p.m., but the contract didn't really say what's going to happen if we don't. We used it, at the time we lived in Israel in a suburb of Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv is an exciting city. The suburb was kids-friendly, but restaurant poor. So we used to go to Tel Aviv, go to the restaurant, and one day we were late, there was traffic, I drove like crazy to be there at 4 p.m. because you need to be there at 4 p.m. to pick up your kids, right? That's what good people do. But then the principal introduced a fine, a very small fine of $3. If you come more than 10 minutes late, you'll have to pay $3. Again, restaurant in Tel Aviv, again late, again traffic. This time I didn't drive like crazy because I'm not going to kill myself for $3. Right? So it changed completely the way I perceived what's happening. Right? Before that it was, I should be there. And I didn't know how bad it is. Maybe the teacher is going to really hurt my kids because she wants to go home. Or maybe she doesn't really care because she has to be there. I didn't really know. Now I know it's $3. If it's only $3, I might as well be late. Right? I don't need to run like crazy. One interpretation that you can give is that the parents, we ran an experiment with this, with the fines, before, after, before, during, and then we removed the incentives. One interpretation that you can give is that while we are paying, the parents feel that, we're paying for the babysitting kind of services. So that's fine. In order to see if that's the explanation, we also had a period that we removed the incentive, we removed the fine in this case, and went back to the original case. So no fine, $3 fine, no fine again. And what we found was that once we introduced the fine, it didn't go back. When we removed the fine, it did not go back because the information didn't change. Before that, we didn't know how bad it is. Now we know that it's $3 bad. If it's only $3, I can survive, even if I don't pay the $3. It's not because I'm paying. Right? It's just that My co-author on this one, Aldo Rostachini is Italian. Aldo Rostachini, Italian, he said basically what you do, you have an Italian equilibrium. In Italy, everyone is late. It's fine to be late. It's not a problem, right? So now, when you introduce the fund, you got to the Italian equilibrium in which everyone is late. You can think before that we were in the Netherlands, and I remember that once we were like 15 seconds late, and the teacher stood in the gate and lectured us for half an hour that we are bad people and it's horrible and we should be there on time. So you can have two kinds of equilibrium. You introduce incentive, you change the equilibrium. People now feel that it's fine to be late, right? So in general, incentives can do this. Incentives can change the perception of what you're doing, and in this case, how bad it is, and make it a commodity. Here's a nice story about making it a commodity. So the dean gives this speech to the entering class of students who come to the university and tells them, we are not one of these places in which men and women are in the same dorms, right? So the men are over there, the women are over there. If we catch you in the wrong dormitory, the first time you're going to get a $50 fine, the second time you're going to get a $120 fine, and if we catch you there for the third time, you're going to pay $250 fine. We are really serious about that. We don't want you to go to the other dormitory. Then he asks, is there any question? And one of the kids raises his hand and asks, can I buy a season pass? Right? The idea is simple, right? You just made it a commodity. You just said, okay, it's just a matter of pricing. If I'm paying for it, I might as well do it, right? It's not, you're contradicting the message. Instead of saying, look, we're in communal relationship, you're going to be there on time, or we have strict rules, you don't go to the dormitory. You change it into a market experience in which I look at the price and I measure it ignoring the norms, right? The same could happen with the exercising. I didn't say that the exercising paper is with Gary Chalmers. In the exercising case, once I introduce incentives for you to go to the gym, I'm completely changing, or maybe one of the hypotheses is that I'm completely changing your perception of why you're going to the gym. Before that, I went to the gym because it was good for me. Now I'm going to the gym because you're paying me money. And if you stop paying me, I won't go to the gym anymore, right? So you're changing the perception of that. So that would have been bad. If that was the case, our results of paying the students to go to the gym would not have been fair. The alternative hypothesis is some kind of habit formation. I get used to going to the gym. The first time I go, I really feel, it stinks. I don't like it. It's really, I'm embarrassed. Then, after a month, I start to enjoy the smell. Maybe I just put it into my schedule. I know that Monday and Thursday I can go to a yoga class in the morning. I just got used to this. And maybe I met friends over there. I don't know why, but for some reason, maybe it's some chemical reaction, right, in my brain. But it turns out that, or at least the hypothesis would be that after 8 times I'll get used to it, and even if we remove the incentives, you still go to the gym. And that's what we found. So when we ran the experiment with the students, we found strong support to this habit formation. The students who went to the gym 8 times during a month were much more likely to go to the gym, to continue going to the gym after we stopped paying them. So we did create some kind of habit. Now, it's not clear how long-lasting, and you need to reinforce it, but at least it gives you some encouraging result that you can influence the behavior of people with simple incentives, right? So that was the beginning of what we wanted to do. The rest of the stuff I'm going to talk about is not going to be, that's more or less a lab experiment. The rest is going to be experiments with companies. So the next one I like to call money for nothing, and I think that that's a very important takeaway from incentives, that in many cases we are giving people incentives to do stuff that they would have done anyway. So on Monday and today, I met with some groups that they care about the environment and they care about the STAR program, for example. So washing machine can have, if I understood correctly, from 1 star to 6 stars. 6 stars is the best. And of course, the environmental groups want to encourage this. One of the programs was giving rebates to people who buy it. And the question is, how many of these people would have bought the washing machine without you giving the incentives? Right? So you want to give the incentives only to the people that are influenced by your incentives. If 80% of the people that you're paying now would have bought it anyway, you're wasting your incentives. Right? You want to to focus your incentives just on the people that are influenced by it. You want to get the guy that would go there, would buy the 2-star appliance without you, and now you're giving them the incentive, so he'll switch to 5-star. Those are the people that you want to incentivize. My claim is that in many cases, you're paying for nothing. And that would be a strong example with lots of money involved in it. Humana, the insurance company, one of the biggest in the US, in the world, I guess, and I understand there's some connections with you now. They have lots of members that are on Medicare. Medicare are people that are 65 and over, and basically they get most of the health care free. And this is done through a private company, Humana, that has incentives to keep them healthy. Once you're sick, they don't like you anymore, but as long as you are healthy, that's what they like, right? They get money and they're happy with you. So they want you to be healthy, which is good, right? I feel if I had to work for BP, I would be willing to do it, but they would have to pay me much more than a company that tries to help their member to be healthy, right? So they want you to do good stuff. Take flu shots, so some preventive medicine like flu shot, and screening like prostate screening. Right? They want you to keep healthy. They want to encourage you to do these activities. What do? There is a long list. Some of them, is applicable to you. Some of it no, but clearly you have enough that you can do. And in 2010 and 2011, they paid $10 per activity that you did, up to 5 activities, up to $50. Why 10 and 50? Because that's what the regulator allows them to do. They are not allowed to pay more than $10 and they are not, per activity, and they are not allowed to pay more than $50 per year. That's in order to prevent price competition. So that's what they did. It's I'll show you the number in a second. It's a very expensive kind of operation. And the question was, can we improve on that? And here's what we suggested. In 2012, we suggested bundling. So instead of paying every activity that people take up to 5, pay people $50 if they take 5 activities. And if they take less than this, don't pay them. Don't give them any incentives. People do 1, 2, 3, or 4, don't pay them. What's the logic? If I really care about the incentives, I'll do 5 activities. If I'm the kind of guy that's really motivated by incentives, I'll take the effort and do the 5 activities. But many of us, I get the flu shot because I think it's good for me. I look at the data, I know that if I have heart disease, I'm 80 years old, this reduces my chance of getting to the ER, which is good from a Humana perspective because they know how much I'm going to cost them, but I might decide to do it. If you'll pay me $10, sure, I'll take the $10. I'm not going to say no to money. But I'm not motivated by this. Right? You're paying me money that is actually not motivating me. Money for nothing. You're wasting lots of your money. That was the reasoning behind it. And here's what we found. Right? So first of all, we had lots of people in it. It's a big program, lots of activities. Here's what we found. That's what we have over here is a percentage change between 2012 and 2011. So that's the number of activities that people had, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's the percentage change. Basically, we see that a bit less people did 0, a bit more did 5, and most of the activities didn't change. So there is it's flat. The same number of people did 1 activity when they got $10 and when they didn't get $10. The same fraction of people did 2 activities when they got $20 for it and when they got $0 for it. They were not motivated by this money. You wasted your money. There is some jump over here, some reduction over here, but all in all, we saw an increase of 2.7%, which is good. It means that changing the incentives, removing some of the incentives didn't have a negative effect. And the reason I'm telling you this story is that it has a huge effect on their bottom line. So the direct cost of paying the incentives was $41 million in 2011, $16 million in 2012. So they saved $25 million. In reality, they saved about double that because every $10 that you send costs you about $10, right, in administrative costs. So they saved, let's be very conservative and say that they saved $25 million by having this really minor change, right? It's a really minor change. But now they're not paying people that are not motivated by incentives. They're paying only the people that are motivated by incentives. Right? And I think that in general, when we want to convince people that this is good, from you up to the CEO of Humana, What we need to do is to bring them some evidence showing, look, your bottom line is going to benefit from that, right? You use behavioral economics, you use these kind of things, and you can save lots of money. That's what we try to do. Any questions about this? No? Okay, no questions, even better. Let's move to the lotteries, right? So we know that people like lotteries. I can give you a boring scientific stuff around it, but basically we know, just go around and show that I can buy lotteries out here, right? It's very easy. Humana gets some people assigned to it, some members assigned to it, and they have only their address. They don't get their phone number. You want to convince them to call them and give them the phone number because they need it, if people don't refill their medicine, and they want to call them and tell them, and so on. There are reasons for them to get the phone numbers. They asked us if we can incentivize them. They told us how much each person is worth to them. That was lots of money. We're going to spend much less than this. We wanted to use lotteries to do that. So in this case, one of the restrictions that we had to work with is that in a state, we need to give everyone the same expected value, at least X sample. So we divided the people in the state to 4, the relevant people. That gave us this funny number of 16,135. And in this case, we told them, we're going to send this letter to 16,000 people. And at the end, from the people that will send us back, we're going to draw 40 people and pay those people, each one of them, $100. That's what they did. That's what we did. And we had 4 different treatments in which we changed the price and the probability of getting it. Right? So the probability can go up or down, and the price goes at the same rate. In any case, each time we're paying $4,000, but with different fractions. And we had a control group, no price in a different state. So we could say, we can compare something. Any guess which one is going to be the most successful? Any guess? Number 4. This one.
Yeah.
Right. So that's also my intuition, and actually it's something nice. When you go to Wikipedia and you look at lotteries, paying with lotteries, I found it says exactly this, that people look just at the price, not at the probability, and then it has this citation needed. Right? I really want the citation. So it's the intuition, it's your intuition, it's also my intuition, right? If you ask people what's the prize this week, they'll tell you $250 million, right? They know the price. What's the probability? It's very low. I don't know what it is. If it's 1 in a billion or 1 in 5 billion, what's the difference, right? And either I'll be lucky or not. But they'll know the price. And that's true also for this. That's the intuition that they have. Here's what we found. Here's the return rate. That's basically flat. In this case, 2,000, 1,500 was the same. People really didn't like the $100. They like it even less than the control. They prefer not to get money than to get the $100. Right? So the $100 turned out to be a really bad idea in this case. If you look at how much it cost them, how much it cost Humana, we see that that includes the lottery price and the envelope, the mailing cost. We see that the most costly was sending them $100. But those were the most effective. They give you a higher return rate at a lower cost. That's the cost over here, about 40-something cents. So that's what we see. So the reason I want to use this, because it's a good, I think, way to get to the next one, but also because this is it's an example of an extremely trivial experiment that you can run yourself, right? It's not rocket science. We had this discussion this afternoon again. It's very trivial. Just change the probability and the price, and you can learn what will work best for you. Right? It's very simple. Turns out that Humana is still working on trying to give back the prizes. So they call people, tell them, congratulations, you won $500. People don't, they just shut the phone, right? They don't believe you, right? So they really have huge problems. Actually, at the end, they have to send people with the check to the people, to the addresses, because people are not willing to take the money. And Humana can't afford not paying them. So it's making it trustworthy is important, but that's So here's an example about stated preferences versus real preferences. And I have a book with John List from the University of Chicago that is coming up in October 8th, so very soon. You should buy it. It's a great book. We wanted to find a title. So we went to Freakonomics. It's a very popular blog with more than 1 million people that follow it, and told people, send us suggestions for title. and we're going to pick one, and the one that we pick will get $1,000. And then we asked people, after we got this list of 500, we got about 500, we narrowed it down to 5 or 6 titles, put it in the blog, and now told people, you should choose, it's a beauty contest. If you choose the one that will be chosen by the most other people, then you'll be entered to a lottery. And we ask them to choose which lottery they prefer, if they are lucky enough to get in there, right? And the possibilities were again, the same expected value of $1,000 in this case. It was either 2 prizes of 500, or something like that. It seems that people don't like the money for sure, getting the whatever, the money for sure, which would have been in this case like $5. But they do like the lotteries, and they seem to be quite indifferent between the different lotteries in this case. So maybe the Wikipedia were wrong, and maybe we are wrong, but we are still testing it. But I'm not sure that we can trust what I say. Do people know what they want? I think they don't. That's the title, by the way, that came out of this exercise. The last experiment I want to talk about today is lotteries with regret. And I think that that's a good example of putting behavioral economics to work, right? So it's not just technical stuff like the lotteries, we also want to have some behavioral stuff. And here's what we have. A couple of years ago, I went to visit the Gates Foundation in Seattle, and I wanted them to give me money. They didn't want to give me money, so I didn't get money, but I got an idea for an experiment, which is also nice, right? And the idea was, they opened this campus. It's a new campus in downtown Seattle with about 1,000 employees. And the city was really worried about traffic. They really wanted to reduce traffic in Seattle. Then the Gates Foundation offered incentives for people not to come. So first, they charged them $9 for coming with a car. Second, they give them a free public transportation, which in Seattle is apparently very good. And lastly, they gave them $3 each time they came without a car. Each time you go to work without a car, you get $3. The Gates Foundation has about 500 people who come without a car a day, so they give about $1,500 in prizes a day just to encourage people to come without a car. And the question I'm going to ask is, can I find a better way, a better use for the money in order to do this? And what I'm going to do is try and use regret. Regret seems to work well. So we know that people like lotteries. We know that people suffer. Again, people have regret. So my grandfather came to Israel in 1948. He bought a lottery ticket, 7 digits, that you had, and we probably have something similar here. And then for 40 years, he kept buying the same sequence of number every week, 40 years. And he wouldn't miss a week. If he was abroad, someone else bought it for him. When he died, my grandmother kept buying this for another 12 years, right? Why? Because imagine that you don't buy it, and then the numbers come up, the sequence come up. You couldn't live with yourself, right? It's just so horrible, right? So people they kept buying this, right? You wouldn't be able to do this. Another example that I enjoy playing poker. Who plays poker over here, but I'm a real bad player. And one of the reasons that I'm a bad player is that I can't live with anticipated regret. If there is something that I know, look, now I should fold, right? Because the chance that I'll get it is really small. I have only 5 outs, and 1 card comes. It really doesn't make sense to put more money into the board. But I know that, so if everyone else folds and I'm not going to see the next card, I'm fine with it. But if someone else calls and they know that I'm going to see the next card, I just put money because I know that the regret, I feel so bad if the card will come and then I'll be out, that I prefer to avoid this. And I think that many of us in the decision we make, we follow this, right? I don't want to feel regret. I don't want to feel that I missed on something because I did some calculation, right? So we wanted to put this to work. Here's what we did. It's a company that runs these workshops. It's a week-long workshop, Monday to Friday, and people come over there, and we had 4 different treatments. In one of the groups of 60 people was the control. The control people, they show up on Monday before lunch. Someone shows up and tells them, look, you shouldn't drive with your car. They were all promised free parking, but he tells them, look, it's bad for the environment. Don't come with the car. That's the first one. The $5 one is, look, it's bad for the environment. If you want us to validate your parking, we'll validate it. If not, we'll give you $5. So it's encouragement to come without a car, actually, right? Because you get $5 each time you come without a car. The third group, if you come with a card, we'll validate your card. If you come without a card, we put your name in a box, and at the end, after everyone has done this, before lunch, we're going to pick up one name, and this person will get 150 points. Right? The last one, the one that we really care about, is the lottery with regret. We're going to do the same, but this time we're going to put all the names in the box. We're going to have a little mark over there saying you came with a car, you came without a car. Right? And then we're going to draw one. So imagine that I'm drawing one. Jim, you're the lucky one. Oh, but you came with a car today. Sorry. Let's take another one, right? So that's the regret that we wanted to have. And it's in a social context, so it's kind of fun and nice. And we wanted to see which one will work best. The results over here, it has some statistical issues around it. I don't want to get into it, but it's an example of how you get management to buy in, right? So in this case, the management was really worried. They allowed us to do it for 1 week, and we needed to get them convinced that we have something in this. This is not something publishable. Those are the standard errors. It's not significant, but it showed the company that something is happening over there, that there is a reason to actually try and do it full scale, right? So I'll talk about it. So basically what you see over here, what's nice about this is that the company knows how much they can get for the parking. If you don't come with a car, we can rent it for, say, $12 a day. That's the estimate that they have. And they can see, look, when we paid $5, we got 31 more people coming without the car during the week. Given the cost that it was, we basically paid $16 per empty parking, which is more than what it's worth. So it's bad. But this one was good, right? So you can price it, which again, if you want to make it work, you need to be able to price it. Not just say, oh, I convinced people to come without a car. No, show us the money, right? Show us the business. Why should a business do this? I think that's really important. So we went on and did a real, large-scale experiment with this with 2 treatments. So we thought that it would be nice to have a bigger pot of money. So instead of paying every day, we paid once a week at the end of the week. The lottery one was such that we take each time you come without a car, we put your name in the box. At the end of the week, we pull one name, this person gets $500. Very simple. The one with regret is the same, but each time we put all the names in the box with the mark whether you came with a car or not. If you came with a car, we pull your name, you're not going to get the $500. And we had 3 treatments, so we always have a control, of course, also 10 groups of 60 participants, and each for a week, and that's what we found. Very, very strong results. Right? Big differences between the control. So lottery is useful, but lottery with regret is much more useful. And it also turns out to be profitable relative to the shadow price, relative to how much they can give. Right? So that's what we're saying, that it's not money for nothing, it's worth it. I'm not going to talk about social incentives, but it's really important to understand that incentives are not just the money that you have. No, it's not just money. It could be flowers, it could be restaurant, it could be reciprocity, good feel, identity, whatever you want, those all go into this. Right? To wrap it all up, the idea of this is, I'm trying to, and I feel like a missionary over here, I try to come over here and convince you that you should use behavioral economics, insight from behavioral economics, and especially incentives. And that incentives are very complicated. They don't come in one size fits all. Right? Come in different ways, and you should think when you do it. You should try and invest effort in experimentation, in pilots, to see what actually works. And if you do that, I think that you and your organization can really gain from it.
Okay, like I said at the start, we've got a slightly different format today, in that we thought we'd bring a couple of people to join Uri at the front of the stage who have worked in incentives. We might ask them some questions and briefly get them to reflect on some of the comments and the studies that Uri has done, but it'll also open up more broadly to the audience shortly as well. So on the stage we have, in the middle we have Katrina Wolf. Katrina Wolf is from Sustainability Victoria. In a former life, she was the manager of incentives at Sustainability Victoria, and now she's the manager of business productivity. We also have Bill Shannon here, who's the principal of the Shannon Company, our co-sponsor of tonight's event. Shannon Company, many of you might be familiar with, run a lot of social marketing, behaviour change campaigns to get behaviour change. So welcome both Katrina and Bill to the stage. Alright, so I guess I'd like to start perhaps with Katrina. Sustainability Victoria certainly does use incentive, or perhaps you can introduce a little bit about Sustainability Victoria first. But Sustainability Victoria does use incentives as part of its toolkit. And I wonder what your reflections are on what Uri has said, and whether any of the things that he's done might be useful for your organisation.
First of all, for those who aren't aware of Sustainability Victoria, we're a government organisation, and we're basically, our role is delivering resource efficiency and integrated waste management projects out to the Victorian community. So a couple of reflections that I was making when I was listening to Uri is around first of all, the concept of experimentation, and the other one around the money for nothing idea. So with experimentation, I actually have a social science background, so the idea of experimentation, my eyes light up and I think, well, that would be great to be able to do that. But in a government context, particularly if it involves monetary incentives, it does raise questions around if we were to go out and do some experimentation and provide one type of incentive to one group and a different type to another group. What are the implications of that? But certainly for non-monetary incentives, of which there will be those sorts of possibilities, then that's something that I think presents some interesting ideas. On the idea of research and how do we actually set what sorts of incentives and work out what is going to be the most effective. Obviously, there's other methods around survey techniques and consultation with the target audience as well. So a number of different ways of actually starting to unpack what's going to be the most effective means to reach those audiences. And as projects are being implemented, then going out and doing the research and finding out exactly what was the impact of that, how did people take that incentive, did it make a difference? Then that's also a really important component of program delivery, which leads me to the next observation around money for nothing, that with the delivery of incentives, and I can talk about my experience for example, with household incentives. So delivery of incentives around helping households to purchase energy efficient appliances. Look, it is true that there will be people who will take up an incentive who may have already intended to actually do that. And some research that we had conducted around household incentives did show that yes, there were approximately half the people would say in a survey post after they get the incentive, and yes, you can look at the questions around, is that the best way of actually testing people, going back to them afterwards and saying, hey, we've given you some money to go out and purchase an item, would you have done this without that incentive? And about half said, no, we wouldn't have done anything differently. Of the remainder, around a third had actually said that without that incentive, they would have delayed their purchase. Another third of the remaining half said that they would have purchased something cheaper, which may have resulted in a lower quality product, perhaps. And the remaining third said, well, without that incentive, we wouldn't have been able to actually go and make that purchase at all. So there's some interesting observations on the money for nothing in regard to that particular.
We might come back and pick up on that in just a moment for Uri, but I'll hand over to Bill. Bill, perhaps a few words about the Shannon Company and also reflect on Uri's presentation and your comments for the work you do.
Well, thanks, Liam. For those of you who are not familiar with the Shannon Company, we are a behaviour change organisation focused on behaviour change programs. Our little credo is that we inspire people to change their lives willingly and for good. That good is always a double entendre, which is good in the sense of an outcome that is good for individuals, the community, society as a whole, and of course good in that we do want change to be lasting. We've worked on programs ranging from water conservation, Our Water, Our Future campaign, the programs for workplace safety. I'm sure you're familiar with mainstream activity. There's a lot more to it. While they are still in that little boy that's waiting for his dad to come home. I've seen it on television. Work that we've done with problem gamblers, encouraging them to seek help. Teenage binge drinkers looking to seek help as well. Interestingly, the only real place that they seek help is the help of their peers, and ask them to talk to their parents about that. So very much our business is focused on behaviour, on behaviour and changing behaviour. Look, I was really interested in a couple of things that Uri said, certainly in that very early part of the presentation when you talked about the experience with the daycare centre. I must say, momentarily I thought it was a very effective road safety campaign because it certainly slowed you down. But I did learn, obviously, afterwards more to it than that. But I thought there was something that you did point out as well that sort of struck a chord with myself, and I know that the team from our company, and that was that you weren't really incentivised to change or change your behaviour in regard to getting to the daycare centre on time by the $3. But I tell you what seemed to make a big impression on you, and that was the reprimand by the school mistress at the Netherlands, or the school in Europe, Netherlands. And I thought that was very interesting because that showed that there was a far greater incentive or disincentive than money alone, and that was being dressed down. And that was very much an emotional connection. And we place a lot of emphasis on the emotional connection. And there was another point you made about and it was very much in the area of odds. How odds, I actually thought maybe odds would work for us, that if I had 40 chances better of picking up that $100 than the 2,000, I think I might have gone for that. I wasn't sure, but it was interesting the way it worked out. Which then led me to think, well, there's actually something that was passed in legislation over 10 years ago to encourage gamblers not to gamble as much, and that was, if you're familiar with this legislation, it was to force the gambling venues to put little messages on their machines to warn gamblers about the odds. And so, and I can't remember the exact warning, but it goes along the lines of something like, you've got a 1,001 chance of winning $1 million. Well, on that basis, Uri, that's actually not a deterrent, that's actually a seducer. I mean, I'm serious. Now, maybe the gambling venues know more about it than we do, and are quite happy to put that on, because obviously on that basis, they're not looking at the odds, they'd be looking at the pot of gold at the end. So I think we should look into that.
Right, Bill.
I'm sure they didn't. And I'm sure they didn't. No one did the controlled experiment.
I just wanted to pick up on a comment that Katrina made about the money for nothing. I'm curious, Uri, in the example you gave, people did multiple activities in order to try and to get to the $50. By bundling, we were able to sort of test, what are the proportion of people who are getting money for nothing. But in the context of, say, a one-off appliance purchase, how can you design a test that tries to stop people, that tries to capture only the people that would have wanted to go to a 5, for example, star appliance?
Right, so how do you convince the right people to do this? And maybe, so instead of answering your question, I'm going to answer an even better question, maybe. So, who do you incentivize, right? So it's, more generally, we talked about it again today and on Monday, who do you incentivize? So in this, you can think about you can incentivize the consumer, you can incentivize the salesperson, or you can incentivize the store. Who's going to make the most out of the incentives that you have? The store, well, the store has lots of money. That's only part of the incentives they have. The customer, well, when I go and buy a fridge, if it's $1,500 or $1,600, $100 is nice, but it's not that important. The salesperson, on the other hand, so imagine that you give the salesperson $50 each time they sell a 6-star appliance. That might be the right place to do it, because for that salesperson, this half an hour just doubled his salary, right? So he makes in half an hour what he usually makes in 2 hours. And the salespeople, we know that they are really influential when you buy appliances, right? So the question in this case would have been, because you can't bundle, like you said, but you can think about who is it that you want to incentivize, right? It's not just giving the incentives, and not just giving the right incentives, but who you're going to incentivize could be really important. And that's something that you should use your intuition, and you should look at this and find that the person in the chain that you can incentivize, usually, in your organization, it's not going to be just one person. You can call it a bribe if you like. And in this case, driving the salesperson would have been the best. I think would have created the best outcome. And that's
I guess a question for Bill or Katrina. I mean, you both work with businesses in behaviour change. Who is it that you try and incentivise, and do you do that sort of thinking to try and find the right person to get the right change from?
Actually, I was very interested in that point in regard to those people who buy into incentive programs and those who don't. And we're looking at something in this particular area, and I wondered, in fact, if you can establish who aren't going to buy in, therefore why waste your money there, and simply, say it's in the area of health, simply provide them with a program of health or wellness. But could, in fact, if people are interested in incentives, to make sure that they're actually going to buy in, could there even be a modest fee for them to become part of that program?
In regard to those to household rebates, the incentive goes to the consumer. However, the salesperson has a big role in those in terms of actually being able to, expedite the incentive for the consumer. So being provided at the point of sale. So that for consumers it's actually discounted for them at the beginning rather than the end. So even though the salesperson or the business doesn't actually receive the monetary incentive themselves, the incentive for them is that it does help to reduce that cost up front for their consumers. So when they can when they go and promote it, it's there as a discount.
Right, I'm just conscious of time a little bit, so if we have any questions from the audience for any of our panel, raise your hand now. One there and one there.
I was wondering about the negative impact of incentives on other actions that aren't being incentivised. So to take the washing machine example, someone is weighing up whether to buy an energy-saving washing machine or an energy-saving fridge, and they choose just to buy the washing machine because that's the one that's incentivised. Has that been measured at all?
No, I'm not aware whether that's been those sorts of comparisons where someone's choosing to buy two products and weighs up the one with the dollars, but it'd be an interesting one to look at.
In general, that's an incredibly complicated question because in economics we call it multitasking. So imagine that you do something that I can measure two things out of it. The quality, I care as an employer, I care about two things: the quality of what you produce and the quantity. Now, quality is very hard to measure and it's hard to incentivize. So I incentivize you on the quantity. What's the effect? As you would expect, right? People do more at a lower quality, right? So this is not the right way. So economists argue that that's not the right way. You shouldn't, if you cannot incentivize, if people come with, they're going to buy appliances, 5 appliances, and you can incentivize only one of them, that might be a problem. And if people are doing a task that is multitasking basically, doing quality and quantity, it's not good to incentivize only one. You should try and give something like, some kind of moralistic incentives, otherwise you distort people. And in general, I think so. The main message of everything that I do is not that incentives don't work. I am a strong believer that incentives work. Sometimes we get them wrong. There's the people who set the incentives, we get them wrong. So we give you incentives to do quantity and you destroy the quality. We give you whatever we do, right? So it's really incentives work, but we have to understand how they work. It's a very complicated way. That's one example.
Okay, we had something. Are you happy to stand up, perhaps?
Yeah, sure. This is a question for Uri. I'm just interested in the extent to which the lottery with regret result might change if you were not having that social impact of the lottery draw taking place in a room full of peers and people knowing that you...
Right.
So just for those in case you didn't hear the question back, the question was, lottery with regret seemed to work really well. Would it work without the social context of that?
Right, so that's the part that I like the most actually about it, the social. So imagine that you would work in the Gates Foundation, right? And you know that you don't need to know that you didn't get it. It's enough that you know almost everyone, and you learn about this guy, he just, but he came with the car, right? So you know the name of that person. The fact that it's social, I think, is extremely important and reinforces what we do, and I really like this aspect of it, right? So it's not, I don't want to take it away. We do have an experiment that is running now with individuals, that some medical device that we want them to use, we want them to enter their weight and some other measures every day. We want to look at the long-run effect, and over there we are not going to have the social aspect of it. And I don't know what the results are going to be. I don't know how important it is that you're part of a group, but I really like the fact that you're part of a group. Next question.
Yeah, just following on to that last question, did you ever think of having another control group for the lottery with regret where you didn't redraw? So if you redraw and the person didn't or didn't hard work, then everyone would miss out?
So I'm not sure that I understand. So did we redraw? We did, right? So
no, I was wondering if you thought of having another group as well as the 3 already. And in the last control group, maybe you don't have a redraw.
Okay.
So whether socially, okay, that person cost it for everyone.
Right. There are 2 problems with this, and they're related. The main one is that the people might be upset. You promised us $500 and you don't give us. And the second one is that they're not going to trust you because you have strong incentives to cheat, right? So I can just do something over there and luckily each time draw the one that is bland, right? And that's something that when you design experiments, someone talked about, I think you talked about the problem with the government, right? You have to be careful when you do something. But that's true also about businesses. When you run an experiment, you don't want to upset the subject. That's a bad idea, right? And the company, the reason we had to do the pilot over here was that we needed to convince the company that people are not going to get upset. And they were not upset by what we did. I think that partly because we actually paid, in this case we paid, so it was, for us it was revenue neutral. We didn't have an incentive to cheat.
Could I just have a quick comment? Yes. I think it's interesting because that question raised for me the idea of looking at other examples that may not be directly related to your business or your cause, that may not in fact be socially benefit driven, but have actually worked. And as soon as Uri mentioned that particular experiment, I thought about every RSL club in Australia that literally has the big board raffle, so that members who don't turn up, they're drawn out of the hat. And I can assure you that that member that didn't turn up, that missed out on that night, knows within minutes that they missed out. And so it's a very, very basic, I know, and you might say, well, you know, it's so fundamentally simple, but it's a very basic technique that's been used by organisations like the RSL for years. And let me tell you, they'd be very unpopular if they didn't have that second draw. We're a revolt.
I have a question, sorry, down the front here. Jim? Sorry, just down here.
Hi. My question's more about incentives for employees, and probably drawing on the concept of this regret theme that's come through. It's about STI targets and sales targets that people are dangled a carrot in front of. And would it be practical to share with your peers, or for employees to share who got their bonus and who didn't, who achieved target and who did not, as a way to incentivise more work?
Right, so that's an extremely loaded question, right? So if you win it, so in sales it's okay because the target is at least objective. But think about worst cases in which the boss decides, you know, she has to pick up the best person. If she picks up you, you think, yeah, of course, I'm the best. Of course she picks me up. I mean, that's good. Maybe you're happy, but she's going to be really upset because she thinks that she's much better than you and she wasn't chosen, right? So if the criteria is not objective but subjective, that's really bad. Now, if it's sales, it's fine because it's not my, you know, oh, I like you or whatever. You were, you know, you gave me some whatever job, right? It's really about objective numbers, right? So that might be better, but then come up, you know, we're all serious, and we also were afraid of it with the lottery with regret. So say that I have kids and they have to use the car because I need to take them in the morning to the daycare or to school, and because of that they didn't win the prize. I'll feel really bad about it, and it's not my fault. And the same would be true with sales targets, right? So that's you have to care about the fairness. Now, if you run it every week over a year, yeah, 1 week I'm less lucky, one week I'm more lucky. At the end, it's going to bounce up, right? So, and I think it's kind of good as long as it's done in the right spirit. Right? It's not humiliating that. So if you have objective measures and you do it enough times to get everyone more or less a chance to do it, that really the good people, you can see who are the good people. I think that's a good idea.
Just conscious of time, we might have time for lots of hands. Yeah, actually, we probably have to do one. We have to do one more question. There's a hand up here. I think it was the first one right over here on the right.
You shouldn't have such interesting speakers. So they can ask the questions.
Thanks. This question's for Uri. You mentioned quite a few different studies. Do you have, or could you tell us about any of those studies, perhaps how long the behaviours were sustained after the incentives were taken away, and what might have been required to keep those behaviours going without incentives?
Right, that's a really open question. So with the daycare stuff, I think it can stay until the end of the year, right? And they didn't mention, you know, with the daycare, in some places the fine is $5 a minute, which is very useful. I heard about one really nice thing in Paris. If you don't come to pick up your kids in time, the principal takes them to the police station and you have to pick them up. That's a good incentive, and that, you know,
that's an emotional connection.
Yeah, emotional connection, right? Go explain to your kids that, you know, you have to pay lots of money for therapists later on. I think that with the daycare, it would, at the end of the year, the new year would destroy all of this learning, right? With incentives, what we found with the students is that the breaks were really important. They have summer break, they go back to the old habits. Winter break, go back to the old habits, right? So a break was really bad. And we had this discussion, Jim and I, this morning, what do I think helps with, you know, if you want to exercise more? And I think there are 3 lessons at least that I got out of this, if you want to keep it for the long run. The first one is that you should incentivize yourself. So you should know that the first few times that you do it are not going to be pleasant. You should stick to it. You should, I don't know, for a month. A month seemed like a good time, but at the beginning, the cost is going to seem much higher than the benefit. but commit to stay for a month. Second, you should make it as fun as you can. So for me, for example, it's watching now. I watch The Sopranos. Before that, I watched Mad Men. So each time I watch, I watch an episode, and that's so it makes it fun. And the third one is not making it a decision. So if every day you'll have to decide, you'll say, oh, today was a long day, I'm tired. No. Tomorrow, oh no, today we have this. That's not going to work well. At the end, you're going to stop. So if you want to make it if you want it to stick, just make, every day I exercise for an hour, and there's no question around it. I need to be half dead in order not to do this. Right? As long as I'm alive, I'm going to do this, and that reduces. There's no cost. I don't have to make the decision and weigh, the cost versus the benefit. I just go and do it. So make sure that you get into the habit, make it fun, and don't make it a decision. I think that those are the three things that can help you keep it for the long run. That's my experience.
And I did promise a question, sorry, there's three more across the list.
Thank you. I just wanted to know, there's this website online that I explored myself, and it's called Make It Stick or Stick Ideas or something like that. Have you heard of it?
Stick.com.
Yeah, and I wondered what you thought about it, just for the audience. It's a thing where you commit to a behaviour. So, for example, I want to run 3 times a week, and you make it public through social media, and you also have a person who supervises you. And so, at the end of the week, you say, "Well, yes, I did commit," and the manager or someone will say, "Yep, this person did." And if you didn't, then they take money away from you. So you put $10. They take $10 away from your credit card, and you put it towards a charity you hate. For example, I don't know, Essendon Football Club or something like that. And I just wondered what your thoughts were on that kind of commitment and
right. So it's a great. So commitment seems to work, right? So commitment like this seems to work, and what they have is, people are willing to say, I put $500, and in 6 months I'm going to stop smoking. Otherwise, I'll have to pay, and I have a friend that is going to verify this, and I give you the money, and in 6 months, if I make the commitment, I get the money back. If not, the money goes either to a charity that I like or to a charity that I don't like, which is even better. It's lots of fun, so I strongly suggest going to stick.com. It's a very nice site. That doesn't seem to work. People don't seem to actually buy in, to select themselves into this kind of commitment, right? So if you look at the success rate, it's very small. They do try to do it with an organization in which it's a bit more successful. It's lots of fun. How useful it is, I think that it's still an open question. At least, it's worth going there and seeing what they're doing.
Could I just add one thing to that? One of the things that we tend to forget is that it doesn't always have to be a tangible reward or a tangible incentive. Certainly in water saving, we found that actually giving people credit for what they're doing, whether it's through the mail in regard to their water bill, so they're able to be measured, recognition can be an important incentive.
Okay, on that note, I'd like to thank Uri Gneezy, Katrina Wolf and Bill Shannon for being on our panel.